Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 10,000 Heroes. I'm your host, Ankur Shah Delight. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show, 10,000 Heroes. Today is a solo cast about bread and gratitude. So, after 9 years of making sourdough bread, which I call ital bread, on the daily, a lot of people now ask me for the recipe. And so today I'm going to give you a special Thanksgiving version of that recipe motivated by International Gratitude Week, which I've just declared. And I'm going to go through everything that goes into the bread depth first. So by depth first, I'm referring to a class of search algorithms in computer science where you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper to look for the solution, kind of like a 3-year-old would ask, why, why? So, what is in the bread? So at the top level, and this is the order I actually put the ingredients in the bowl, there is tap water, starter, flour, and salt. So a first approximation would be like, that's what's in the bread. Tap water, starter, flour, and salt. But we are going to go a little bit deeper into that. So what's in the tap water? Well, chemically, it's just good old water. But what does it take to get that water into my stainless steel bowl? Well, our water comes from a well on our property that's around 78 feet deep, and it's then pumped into my house and pressurized. So if that's the case, the water is made up of well water, pump, electricity, some plumbing, which could be PEX or metal, or I don't actually know what most of it is, pressure tank, more electricity for that to work, and more plumbing for that to work. So in my mind, I can simplify this into a few things. There's the well water, which is going to be a good candidate to go deeper into. And then there's roughly like things a complex industrial society made. So things a complex industrial society made. And then electricity. All right. And so continuing our little journey of why. What is in well water? Well, I live next to the Dungeness River. This well is hitting the first aquifer. My guess is most of the water at this level comes from infiltration from the river every year, and it's not old school fossil water like you get in many places. So the water, the well water, is made of river water. River water, that's probably the main thing in it, which is made of snowmelt, mainly, I think. Maybe there's some springs, but I think the springs also come from the snowmelt. And the snowmelt is some sort of like very complex interaction of weather and the water cycle that is actually affected by humans and this whole complex industrial society thing. Complex industrial society. And ultimately, that weather and even the ways that the complex industrial society affects it are made of physics. And I think that is where my depth for search is going to end because I don't really understand what physics is made of. So I'm just going to put that. It's like the red is the bedrock of the inquiry. All right. So that's one ingredient of the four. And what's curious and what to me gives us a lot of hope for the possibility of infusing our lives with gratitude is that there's, a lot of our experience of the world is included in that tap water. And a lot of things that I would, and maybe some of you would also think of negatively, like the complex byproducts of our industrial society that are leading to climate change, are just they're just in there. For better or for worse, those things are all in there. Multiple times, in fact, they're in there in the weather there, and then we can go back up. So now we go back up. This is a graph. This should be so. This one is actually like that, but then we can go into this like, all right, there's this complex industrial society, things that made. What's in all of that? I mean, there's a lot more we could get into with that, but basically, there's the whole of human evolution is in there, and all of the different societies that we've generated up to this point. And then there's electricity. So this is interesting. Where we live, I think 90% of the water comes from hydroelectric dams. And then some of it is from nuclear power. And a very small amount is from fossil fuels. That's how we roll up here in the Northwest and have for decades. And so, yeah, in this there's hydroelectric dams. I mean, they're built out of concrete and metal and turbines and all that. So it's like things a complex industrial society made over here. And I mean, nuclear as well. I mean, all this, right? But of course, this all includes lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of other people, all doing their jobs for better or worse in terms of its effect on many aspects of our environment and each other. But and there's war all up in here, and there's nuclear disasters, and there's the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation. That's just all in this electricity that is necessary to pump and get this well water up into my house so it can get in this bowl and make this bread. And so I'm forced in this moment to be grateful for all those things if I really want to be grateful for this bread and for my dinner on Thursday and every other day, because that's just what I do every day. All right, starter. Great. You can already tell I'm going to run out of room here. Starter is interesting in that it's made of water. We already know what happens to the water. Flour, which we'll get to, and then some incredibly complex interaction of microbes and yeast. So this is different than this is a different complex thing. This is a very old school, natural, complex thing over here. It's much older than the human industrial stuff that we've been talking about so far. And that's what the starter's made out of. So we know what the water comes from. We're going to deal with the flour later. So let's just go like, where does this stuff come from? And this, where does that come from? I mean, the simple answer is that it has evolved, but I don't think that's like a great. Do we actually know where that comes from? Nope, I don't have any idea. I'm just going to say biology, which of course is made of chemistry, which is made of physics, which is described by math. But there's a lot of obviously there's a lot in here I don't know. So I think we could just, these are all things that I just have no idea about. Okay. But if you actually found this and you're like, how do I make bread? The best way to get starter is to ask a friend. You'll find tons of information on the internet about how to make your own starter. Most of the people that have tried to do that I know have failed because it takes 2 weeks, and most of us can't do anything that takes longer than 3 minutes. So go to a friend or go to a bakery and borrow some starter. And in addition to getting the starter a lot easier than if you had made it yourself, you're also building connections with your community, and you'll be able to save that starter for them when they go on vacation and their starter dies. So use it as an instrument of building community rather than making your own. All right, so that's starter. We kind of like got out of that one easy. The flour. All right, so the flour, it comes from wheat. In my case, hard red wheat. It's a variety called espresso. And it comes from a mill, which is on my kitchen counter. And it comes from the miller, someone who's running that mill. And it comes from electricity. So doing the depth first search, we've already done electricity. The miller is my daughter, Jasmine. So I think most of you who are adults know how that happened. And the mill, again, is a product of complex industrial, what is it? A complex industrial society made it. There's bamboo involved. That's cool. And then there's stones and bits of metal and plastic. So kind of like all the major categories of modern manufacturing are represented in that little, it's like 1 square foot of my counter space. And it really is amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful mill. And then the wheat. So the wheat is really interesting. And the wheat comes from the soil and the seed and the farmer and the rain. Don't think the wheat gets irrigated, though it might. There might be some like irrigation going on here. But I think it's often planted in the fall and then harvested in the summer, so maybe not. Yeah, I mean, this just gets very, very complex. But for the purposes of like my life and community building, these farmers are people I know. There's Nash and Jay. And so these people's lives are just really important to my life and my day, and they deserve a lot of gratitude. The rain goes back to the weather we talked about earlier. The seed comes from the previous year's wheat, so that's it's saved in that way. And the soil comes from, I think, a long history of erosion and mineral breakdown, which comes up from the mountains, plus biology and the evolution of, I don't know, probably thousands, could be many more than that, of different species of microorganisms that are breaking down all the different plant and fungal matter that is in the soil in order to create the fertility that's there. Mixed, of course, with mineral nutrients that are washed in from the river, which we've already discussed from high up in the mountains. So at this point, there's very little of our world that is unaccounted for in terms of the gratitude. There's like the whole system of physics that we can neither understand nor deny. There's the whole evolution of biology, both of ourselves, but also of all of the bacterial and insect and other animal species that make that fertility possible in the soil. There's a whole evolution of plants, of course, and mushrooms, which I didn't put explicitly here, but it's incredibly important and part of the starter. And, there's all the industrial machinery that went into it. There's the electricity that we talked about and the threat of nuclear holocaust. And all of the people that work in all of these industries, many of whom I know and many of whom I don't, that go into every single loaf of this bread. And that's to say nothing of the salt. And, there's many kinds of salt, and I don't know as much about that except that it comes from my friend Kachi. So this is really an invitation to deconstruct what we're grateful for and to go deeper and find the whole of the cosmos and everyone you like and everyone you don't like in everything you're grateful for. Because my sense is that for most of the things that surround us, that will all be true. Happy, 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 happy Gratitude Week. If you like this episode, you can join the 10,000 Heroes Club, our own community of purpose, by clicking the link below this video. You'll never miss an episode, you'll have opportunities to nominate the people I interview and the questions I explore.